Exactly.
All right, let's get this going. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Polk County Board of Commissioners. It's July 15th, 2026. Extra agendas are on the back table. And all commissioners are present. First up is for comments not on this agenda. Anybody like to address the board for comments not on the agenda? Todd.
Morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
So we had our pre-construction conference with our paving contractor yesterday. This is for the overlay on Enterprise Road. They proposed a schedule for paving that road of next Friday and Saturday, but they would like to close the road through traffic. Local access would be allowable. So we're okay with that. I did call one of the larger farmers along that road and asked them about whether that would have an impact on them. And they did not think it would have an impact on them or the other farmer, but the other one goes out the other way. And they said, we can just hold off for 2 days and we'll be good. So looks like we're okay there. So with your permission, we will go ahead and get that noticed.
Signage.
Pardon me?
Signage.
Yes, they'll get signs up. Told us they'd get those up today as soon as we approve their traffic control plan. So they've submitted 2 traffic control plans. One is if we denied the request to close, and one if we allowed it, so we can pick and choose which one, and then get that going.
So locals have about a week, a little more to as a heads up.
Yeah.
Good. I'm good.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks, Todd. Anyone else? Okay, next up's approval of agenda.
Second.
Been moved and seconded, and all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion passes. Approval of minutes from July 8th, 2026.
I move approval.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye, motion passes. Approval of consent calendar.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion passes. Brings us the monthly treasurer report. Everybody's got it in front of him. Any questions? I guess he's not here to answer, but should be a chance to look at it. So that's kind of about that, but we did receive it. And that brings us to the public meeting. Initiation of legislative amendment planning file LA 2601. Ms. Hannah Breckner and Todd McWigan. Thank you.
All right. Good morning. I'm Hannah Brickner, Senior Planner with Polk County Community Development. The department has received a request for the Polk County Board of Commissioners to initiate the legislative process to amend the Polk County Comprehensive Plan to add a significant mineral and aggregate resource site to the inventory. Polk County Zoning Ordinance Section 115040 dictates that legislative amendments may be initiated by the Board of Commissioners or Planning Commission, but an interested party may request that the Planning Commission or the Board of Commissioners initiate a legislative amendment. In this case, Riverbend Materials has requested that the board initiate a legislative amendment to add an approximately 15.2 acre area. There's a map up there submitted by Riverbend Materials. To the Polk County Comprehensive Plan Significant Mineral and Aggregate Resource Inventory. The area subject to the request is contiguous to an existing mineral and aggregate extraction area and is located in the exclusive farm use zone. Riverbend Materials provided some documents for the board to consider in their decision. A memo summarizing this information was made available on July 7th, 2026. An amended site map, which you can see on the screen, and additional information was added to the record after the memo was made available. In order for the board to initiate a legislative amendment, the board shall make findings that the proposed change is in the public interest and would be of general public benefit. The board could make findings based on the information in the record and the analysis in the memo that the proposed legislative amendment is in the public interest and will be of general public benefit and initiate the proposed legislative amendment. Or the board could decide not to initiate the proposed legislative amendment. Let me know if you have any questions.
Questions?
Yeah. I have some questions for staff. So what exactly does initiation commit the board, the county, to doing?
So the board would need to direct the Polk County Planning Commission to conduct public hearings to consider the criteria for inventory for amending our comprehensive plan to include the site on the inventory. That would entail what's called an economic, energy, social, and environmental analysis to to balance competing Goal 5 resources and to determine an appropriate extraction area, that impact area around the extraction area that limits identified conflicting uses. And so it's a process that would involve a lot of public input. Once it's on the inventory, the applicant would then or could concurrently apply for a conditional use in order to extract the mineral resources that are there within the exclusive farm use zone. The exclusive farm use zone would not allow the extraction of aggregate from this site unless it's included on our inventory. It would be staff's preference that the inclusion on the inventory and the conditional use application be done concurrently, so that we would be able to really analyze all of the criteria at one time. The applicant or the riverbed material seems to be willing to do that. The burden would be the county's burden to demonstrate that it meets the criteria for inclusion on the inventory, but it would not be our burden on the conditional use side. It's the applicant's burden to meet all of the conditional use criteria. The applicant had, or Riverbend, it's not really an applicant here, the requestant has communicated to planning staff that they would bear the burden on the legislative amendment and would do the work that was necessary in order to include it on the inventory. But the county would still ultimately be responsible for that and all of the work that is involved from planning staff, putting together the reports, doing the notice, conducting the meetings. The Planning Commission would make then a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners on whether or not to include it on the site after conducting public hearings. And then the board would conduct its own public hearing in order to review the criteria for inclusion in the inventory. And at that point, any appeals either way, the county would be responsible for the legal cost of putting together a record and potentially defending that at LUBA and Court of Appeals if it was challenged. And that's really where the county's responsibility would lie. Riverbend Materials has made it clear that they would be willing to do all of the fact finding and bear a large portion of that cost. But we would still basically have to evaluate that without bias and make recommendations.
Okay, thank you. So if it gets appealed to LUBA, that would be on the county to defend. Or
well, the county could not show up, but it would be kind of weird if we're saying that we want to put it on our inventory and include it in our inventory, and then
get a sense of costs, future costs. Has staff done an analysis of time?
No, we have
some GIS work too. I don't know. Have we done any analysis there?
No, we have not done an analysis of how much time it would actually consume. It's kind of hard to predict, honestly. I mean, we went through one of these before, and it was very, very costly to the county, and it was very, very time consuming. It went on for over 20 years. But in that instance, it was a new site, and this is an expansion of an existing site. And so I think that the potential impacts are better defined here because there's been a mineral and aggregate site operating since prior to 1992. I think it's been operating since prior to the 70s at a certain scale, but it was included on our inventory in 1992. So I think that provides a better understanding of the externalities associated with the site that we didn't have at the Hayden Lake site, which is a site that went on for 20 years. But it's really hard to predict. I mean, if the EC analysis is open for basically any arguments when we go through the process to include this, and it can be exhausting to address every potential issue that is raised, potential, you know, issues. I think that were a problem in the previous application had to do with transportation and water impacts. I think that we have a much better understanding with this existing site at what transportation is going to look like and what potential impacts to groundwater would look like. So sort of the main pain points from the previous application, I think wouldn't be applicable here, but it's just, this is in an urban environment or adjacent to an urban environment. It's just really hard to know.
So, and I'm just thinking as a taxpayer, what is the benefit to our taxpayers on this project, approving it?
I think Riverbend could do a better job of really quantifying, you know, what they calculate the economic benefit to be, but just broadly, it's expensive to, in both environmental cost and in actual cost to move aggregate. So you put it in a truck and then you got to drive it across roads and you got to get it to where the construction is occurring. And so having a site that's adjacent to an urbanizing area reduces the transportation costs, which then theoretically reduces the cost of mineral and aggregate for those projects. But there's a caveat to that. I mean, you know, there isn't a lot of competition in mineral and aggregate in our area anymore. And so it's hard to say really how that would be realized in actual savings. I think the applicant or Riverbend has quantified it really as a formula. When you start to move beyond hauling 5 miles, the cost starts to escalate. And I think that they could provide a better understanding of what that could look like. But I think it's obvious how important mineral and aggregate resources are to the community. In this instance, there's a replacement site for this mineral and aggregate location. The board had contemplated that when the board agreed to improve the Hayden Lake site in its inventory of mineral and aggregate resources. That site, though, is located closer to the city of Independence off of Highway 51, and there is a haul distance to get to the West Salem, and it would take a while to get that infrastructure in place in order to be able to start moving rock out. So likely rock would come from Marion County in the interim. I mean, the Riverbend can probably talk a little bit about that. So I don't really have a way to quantify what those types of impacts would be, but the county has proactively included a replacement site in its inventory for the purpose of shutting down really the Kruger site and this site.
I'm hearing that. Has anybody independently evaluated the county's aggregate supply and projected demand? It probably doesn't exist at this stage.
No.
Yep.
We haven't closed any of the sites on our inventory of significant resources since the inventory was created in 1992. But we know that the Kruger site really isn't operating, and this site is really coming to a close. So I think we're at a point now as we're approaching 2030 where that inventory, some of those sites on that inventory are coming to an end. But I don't have an answer for, you know, what the impacts are for the remaining sites and developing the sites and the cost of developing the sites and what that would mean. That type of analysis has never been done here.
Good, thank you. Good job. So at this time, I'd like to know if the requester would like to address the board. Please state your names and addresses, please.
Yes, thank you so very much. And we want to be respectful of your time, but also the opportunity to answer all of the questions that you have for staff and for this request in general. My name is Daisy Goebel, for the record. I am an independent land use consultant working with Riverbend Materials, and I am here to speak in favor of initiating the Goal 5 amendment process to extend the address. My address is 5842 Valley Mead Street, Southeast Salem, Oregon. My request today to extend the lifespan of Riverbend West. As Hannah and Austin noted, we're not asking you to make a land use decision at this time. The question that you're answering today is whether or not it's in the public interest to begin evaluating whether or not to expand Riverbend West. If the answer is yes, the next step is for us to go back and go through the process of demonstrating that the proposal is consistent with Goal 5. But today we're just asking you to allow us to begin that process. So locally sourced aggregate is a very important economic commodity for Polk County. Aggregate is integral to all types of construction, and 50 to 60% of the material from Riverbend West actually goes into local roads and infrastructure improvement projects. These products have to come from somewhere, and that somewhere should be local if it can be. Sourcing aggregate within Polk County not only diversifies the economy and provides good jobs, it also shortens those haul routes, which reduces carbon emissions and cuts down on the costs of public improvements. So we're here to just note that capitalizing on this readily available source of aggregate makes common sense. And in the face of rising construction and transportation costs, if we choose not to explore mining this expansion area, it will cost the county and its development community about $25 million over the next 8 years. And that figure's a bit on the low end, we expect, but we've submitted a memo explaining how we got there, and I can provide it to you if you need it. But what this image shows is that the proposed expansion area in red is essentially an island surrounded by the existing mine. That means that when we talk about the impact area of the proposed expansion, it almost entirely overlaps with the impact area of the existing site. So where there's new impact area, it doesn't have any additional effects on residences, businesses, farms, or forests. It's just a carve out in the middle of the existing mine that we have an opportunity to explore mining. So voting yes today is the first step. If this initiation is approved, Riverbend will be fully responsible for obtaining all of the required state, federal, and local permits, will obtain any surveys, plans, and impact studies needed to evaluate the expansion, and complying with all applicable laws and regulations. We do want to note that there's more closed aggregate mines in the county than active ones today, and each closure comes with additional costs to taxpayers, to the environment, and to the local economy. So allowing Riverbend West to expand will secure this resource for years to come. We really appreciate your time and consideration in this matter, and we're happy to answer any questions you might have. Anders is the land use attorney working on it, and we also have Steve Smith, who has been working in the industry for 20 years with Riverbend, and so we have a good wealth of knowledge to sort of help answer those more nuanced questions.
Questions, John?
Does that end your presentation?
That's the end. Thank you.
Well, I've had this conversation with you in the past. So for the record, you have, I think, tried to help educate all of us about the action. So my first question is, why is that an island? Why is it still there?
Go ahead, Andrew.
You don't need to move it. It picks you up.
Okay, I'll move it back then.
Yeah.
For the record,
Gotcha.
yeah, I have a loud voice. My name's Anderson Beals, and like Daisy said, I'm one of the attorneys for Riverbend Materials. I'm at Sherman, Johnny and Hoyt. My address is 693 Chemeketa Street, Northeast, Salem, Oregon, 97301. So why is it an island? It was excluded in the 1992 decision from the extraction area. That decision does not say why that is. It's there. It doesn't have a whole lot of use other than being natural area right now. But as you can see, it's not even really part of the corridor for wildlife along the riverfront. And so, and if you go out there and look at it, which Daisy and I did, it's not nearly as dense as it looks like in this aerial image. So whatever minor benefit it has pales in comparison to the additional benefit of mining. There's a lot of good rock there. And if we are able to mine in that area alone, just the red area, it's going to extend the mine, we estimate 7 to 8 years. So this will continue to be a reliable local aggregate source for years to come. And as you might be able to note from the map, But what I can say to you is that this is not going to require a new access. This is going to be traffic coming in and out from the same place it has been for years and years and years and years and years. So frankly, our position is that whatever impact there is, if any, that impact is really just prolonging the status quo. That's it. And you didn't ask this, but I just wanted to touch on the cost to the county and the staff time and legal expenses. There's no denying that the county is going to need to devote time and resources to this. And Sherman, Johnny, and Hoyt, our firm, we were involved with that 20-year LUBA process that was mentioned for Hayden Lake. This isn't our first rodeo. That said, we will really do whatever we can to minimize the burden on the county in terms of staff time and costs. Every single study, the analysis of what the Polk County currently has in terms of aggregate resources, that's going to be Riverbend Materials paying the experts to do that analysis and providing that for the county. That is not the county going out and paying experts to do that analysis or having staff spend hours and hours doing it. That's going to be on Riverbend. Legal expenses at LUBA. So when I've been involved in land use appeals processes, I assume this is the way it's going to go. I cannot guarantee, but my assumption is that, again, we do all the work. Riverbend's lawyers do, okay, not all the work, but 95% of the work, doing the briefing. And you've got county counsel right here who hopefully doesn't disagree with me, but we're going to be doing the briefing. We're going to be doing the argument. We're going to be putting together the record, submitting the record, objecting to the record if, you know, that an appellant might try to include. To the extent possible, we're going to do all the work, and county council and planning staff are going to have to do some work. No question about that. But as far as the legwork and making this thing successful, that's going to be on Riverbend. And then I did just want to confirm that Riverbend is going to consolidate all land use applications that are going to be associated with this, including the conditional use permit, so that it is all one shot. We're not going to do this in a piecemeal fashion. And we're also going to suspend deadlines where applicable so that the legislative process runs at the same track as the conditional use process. So the county is not going to be under the gun to make a decision on the conditional use permit before it can make a decision on the legislative piece. What I'm trying to say is that we're going to be as cooperative as possible to make this as smooth as it can be. There's no predicting how smooth it's going to be, but this is a lot different than Hayden Lake. And in fact, I would go so far as to say exploring this site and eventually approving it if that's appropriate after all the analysis is done. This is partly how you avoid another Hayden Lake. Because if you don't approve this site, eventually you're going to have to approve a new site somewhere else to have enough aggregate. And it's going to be a much bigger lift to do that some other brand new place that's never been mined before than it is to do it right here on this little island. And the little blue area too on the map I just wanted to point out is that was the area that Riverbend had included in the initial pitch to the county in terms of what we wanted to expand. But in conversation with the county, we took that off the table to minimize whatever impact might occur on residences over there on the east side. So I think I've said what I want to say, but happy to answer any more questions you have. We have Steve Smith here, who's more on the operations side, or he is on the operations side and is a wealth of knowledge from Riverbend. If you want to know anything about the economics, how we arrived at that $25 million cost savings figure, we're happy to talk about that if you want to do it today.
You don't get this site, what are you going to do? Where are you going?
Hayden Lake is a few years out. It's not going to be operational for 2 to 3 years. We don't get this site, we're just going to have to slow down. But Steve Smith can probably speak to that better than me.
Yeah, so with the current volume on the west side of the river, it's plus or minus 300,000 tons. So obviously this site's about done. So, So the import would come from our Hillroy location or our South Turner location, which is in Marion County. Got to haul all of the across the bridge, and that's where all the cost comes from. I mean, it's from South Turner, where all the ready mix ags come from. That's close to an hour one way. And the Hillroy site's probably about an hour 15, hour half round trip. So you'd be, making all the rock over there, importing it, stockpile, and then reselling it. Or worst case is you're delivering from there. So those hauls become very long, and that's the big issue there. That's a lot of carbon. There's a lot of truck miles, a lot of damage to the roads. It's just it's a lot to move material anymore with aggregates. So short term, that would be the solution, is to import material. Like they said, Hayden is quite a ways out still. There's a lot of stuff to still do. And it's a big project where this is really in the middle of the mine. We've mined on both sides of this piece. And, all the operations still there. So,
Steve, what is this rock primarily used for?
Over half of it's for infrastructure, whether it's a new development, maintenance on the roads. It could be an overlay on a city, county, state road.
Asphalt mix.
Yeah, asphalt. Yeah. So.
And the other half?
The other half is residential, commercial, concrete, and just aggregates in general.
Yeah. Let's just break it down here.
Okay.
Because you don't need to spread it all out for me here. It's concrete and asphalt. So you're moving some of this rock to other locations as well, right? I mean, it's not like it stays right there at that operation.
The future plan is it does stay there.
Because you're running out of a resource anywhere else.
Well, no, we have a resource over on the east side of Salem that covers that market. The idea is we cover the west side of basically river west, from the river west, so the local community.
And your team's going to have to sell that to the public.
Yep.
That rock's going to get used right here. And again, I'm a huge supporter when it comes to making sure that we have the mineral resources that we need for asphalt and concrete. It's not quarry rock. We can't do that. So I get that. But I also see concrete trucks coming into my county from as far away as Woodburn and from, south of Corvallis. So, which is also one of your operations, I believe. The premise that, we're not going to have trucks running up down the highway moving rock, whether it's already mixed in asphalt and concrete, doesn't really fly with me, but good luck on selling that to the public. So the other issue I have is, again, the answer, I didn't get an answer on why we didn't continue to extract in that space. So I'll leave that. Somebody will answer that question for me. But at some point, 7 or 8 years doesn't motivate me a lot. It doesn't motivate the public much either when they look at what's left when this is done. And this is an issue that I brought up specifically before, and I still don't know the answer to how are you going to fix this wound going forward, because that's what the public wants to have an answer to. Again, we want to support mining aggregate, but not at this expense. And again, we've evolved in this country and as a race to a place where we should be able to answer that. And so at some point, you all are going to have to answer that. If we continue to go through this, people want to know, how are you going to make these sites whole again? Right? And so you don't have to answer me. I'm just telling you, this is my perspective. And, going through this process, as is lengthy. It's very challenging, and it's not like the Board of Commissioners here don't get to share in the pain. We do. I mean, we get elected to represent the people, and so we better be smart about both sides of the coin here and ask all the right questions. And I know it's challenging, but you have to make us want to do this as a community. And right now my bet is that you probably don't have much want around that site. So, I get that, we need to have this resource. And I'm less concerned about, the cost of the legislative amendment. I'm concerned about it, but I'm less concerned. And so for the little bit of gain here, the amount of challenge that we have is problematic for me. So you guys need to make certain that you have, a plan for how you're going to make this a positive net outcome for the community. I mean, again, Polk County, yes, gets some benefit as a county government, and yes, some community members get it, benefit out of it. And frankly, my belief is if the majority of this aggregate was going to get poured into slabs and foundations for West Salem apartments, maybe that's a net positive, but you know, I don't find that to be a big positive for the county overall. But that's your business, not mine. So anyway, I'll have more questions as we go on, but I'll stop there.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about why the site, the county approved in 2019 has not been developed. And you mentioned that there are some plans to develop that. That was a 20-year process trying to meet demand, and nothing has come of it.
You want to take that? You want me to start?
Why don't you start?
It'll pick you up there. It's fine.
So it's not that we're just holding off on mining. It's not, we don't have final Dogami approval.
Okay.
We have to get a Dogami operating permit. And we also need to get a Department of State Lands permit. Perhaps the biggest thing right now is ODOT needs to, Steve kind of understands this a little bit better than I do, or a lot better than I do, but there's a lot of infrastructure that needs to be put in. We don't have final approval because it's a new site and there's a lot of regulatory steps to go through outside of the county. So land use approval on the county level is step 1. And then step 2, 3, 4, 5 is approval from various state agencies that also have jurisdiction, which is also kind of a backstop. You know, you mentioned the reclamation plan. What are we going to do to fix the wound? We have to have a final reclamation plan from Dogami as part of the land use applications that are going to be required here before mining. We'll have to have a conceptual reclamation plan that the county approves, which is going to be part of the public process. But then Dogami will put in in order to get our permit, we'll have to have a very thorough reclamation plan approved by the state. So the uses are going to be kind of determined in consultation with the county, the public, and the various state agencies on how we make this land whole. But your question as to why Hayden Lake isn't yet operational after the 20-year process, there are still regulatory pieces in place, but that site is kind of unique. It has its unique problems, or I should say not problems. It has its own unique issues to deal with that we just don't think are present here. But yeah, I mean, Steve can put a little bit more flesh on that bone if you'd like him to.
Yeah, there's still some hurdles. We're still waiting on a few permits. The infrastructure is the DOT requirements to access have changed a lot since the process started. So we've got a rough design ready to submit to the DOT, but you know, they have to approve it and design it, and so that still has to happen. It's pretty significant. So it's acquiring some property, it's widening the road, it's potentially moving some power lines, and so we got to go through that process with them. And then once that's approved, then we actually have to construct the project. So, but we have to get all the approvals before we take that next step. And we're making progress.
Oh, yeah.
I think there's only a few left we have to do. So, but it's been a very painful process for us as well. I understand. So, what you guys have had to do. So, it's taken a long time, and it's a pretty big, there's still a lot to do to get that opened and ready to go.
And is that factoring in? So I'm getting the sense from your request that this is a fairly immediate need. That
yeah,
so
we
curious if that Hayden Lake site has been factored in the timelines to get that operational. So I'm hearing that's still your intent. Factor into that supply and demand calculation, or if that's being left out for the purposes of this request.
I think it's both. I mean, the need is going to be immediate here. Like I said, the short-term fix is hauling it from across town over the bridge and processing or reprocessing here. But knowing how these go, and we still have some pretty big hurdles at Hayden with the infrastructure piece of it. And then, if this process takes that much longer, or if it doesn't work, obviously it's kind of, we're going to be short either way. So it's a matter of trying to supply this side of the market as soon as we can without impacting everybody. So.
And if I could just say, one of the things, to be clear, we're not abandoning that project. So I just want to make that crystal clear. We're not abandoning the Hayden Lake project. As far as the really detailed analysis of, what the county's aggregate needs are, what Riverbend's kind of projections are, we're going to get real into those details during the process. Today's ask is not to go from 0 to 100. Today's ask is to go from 0 to 1. So I don't know if that makes the board feel better or worse, to understand that there will be a detailed process where we will have to provide lots of information and justify this project. So I'm not sure.
For a second.
Yeah.
Initiating a process, I believe, is more of a step forward than a 0 to 1. We have to make a determination about public benefit at this stage. And that's a pretty high bar to Commissioner Pope's point. We want to make sure public concerns, and we hear those voices, whether they're there or not, because they're going to come eventually, are satisfied. And one of my questions is, I said that there's no impact, right? That this is kind of a status quo continuation, but it could add another 7 years of impacts. How do you describe those impacts to surrounding properties and the public in that area? Because it's not nothing, right? There is an impact. There's an added impact of years of traffic dust, noise, et cetera.
Yeah.
And when I first met with you all, that was really my message, is how much community engagement is there going to be, even prior to initiating, asking us to initiate this process. I'm curious if that's been done, or how you describe that for folks.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And I think that to Commissioner's point as well, Commissioner Pope's point as well, that there is, this process does require us to state our case to the community and to be good community partners. And when we talk about reclamation plans, Riverbend has, won awards for reclamation for different sites in Oregon from Dagami, and really does take a really thoughtful approach to making a site-specific reclamation plan that works for the community, whether that's conservation, whether it's industry, whether it's recreation. But making that a really thoughtful process means that we're not just coming to the table with some beautiful AI rendered drawing of what it's going to look like in 10 years, but it means that we're really taking that thoughtful approach to work with community groups, working with the county, working with the planning department, and working with Dogami to make sure that our reclamation plan makes sense. But that is the onus is on us to state that case and to go through that Goal 5 process to show that it is consistent with the county's adopted comprehensive plans. So do appreciate that. And I think that when we say status quo, we mean that the trucks that are going in and out today are similar to the types of trucks we'd see going in and out in 5 years, maybe in 7 years. The quantity, the traffic impacts, the noise impacts aren't going to significantly change. We won't even be moving equipment from one site to the other in terms of putting the crusher in a different location on the site. And so when we say that there's no new impact or that it maintains the status quo, we're just saying that what exists today is largely similar to what will exist if this expansion is allowed to continue.
So they've asked pretty much the same questions I had. I appreciate you removing the blue area that was adjacent to the residents. That was my biggest concern, is the impact to local houses right there. One thing you haven't touched on is the seismic retrofit of Center Street Bridge and the impact that's going to have on getting aggregate. If you're going to import, your turnaround time is going to be horrendous. Wallace Road is going to be one lane entering the bridge for 3 years, off and on for 3 years. And then as soon as they get through that, then we're have another, probably even more interruptive stage of that. So having rock on this side of the river is going to be pretty crucial. And And I appreciate the efforts you made here and the information you shared today, but going away from that rock sitting there, why would you leave an island sticking out in the middle of water that's useless? And the value of that for aggregate to our communities, I mean, you should be able to keep your costs a lot lower if you're not importing, which is going to help us move forward in our region and keeping our costs down for our constituents. I can see the benefits. So thanks for making that adjustment on it against those residents there.
Thank you.
I'd like to explore that statement a little bit further so that I hadn't really thought about that bridge impact. Not that you'll have this site, hopefully you would have it done in that 3-year period. But if you did have approval, you know, is this an essential aggregate for this county or this side of the river's concrete needs?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I just put it on the record for anybody to hear. We don't use quarry rock
Yeah.
for concrete.
The concrete aggregates actually come from a further source. Right now, they're supplied right here. So we still have a little bit of material left. We have the ready mix plant there that supplies basically all the concrete on the west side of the river. We do bring trucks up from Corvallis, but they are coming up empty to actually help with bigger pours on this side of the river. The aggregates, the concrete aggs, we don't use quarry rock, small, fine sand, good, clean sand. If this site's not available, it actually comes from South Turner. It's a long haul, long ways away.
Where again? South Turner?
South Turner. So it's south of Turner.
That's across the bridge.
Across the
right.
bridge, out
Yeah.
south of Turner. So it's a long process. So this site has very good concrete aggregates. It's well proven and it's a smaller aggregate base. So those, and we'd extend those, you know, if this were to be permitted. Yeah, there's 7 years to source, but we're going to save every piece of what we call concrete materials, which would be 3/4 round and smaller in the sand. So that could even extend a little further. So
Steve, can you demonstrate the existing material? You know, is there a percentage that stays on this side of the river in Polk County? I assume it's the same material that you're looking in this.
Yeah, so our the last few years, which we focused strictly on the west side, has been around that 300,000, 250 to 300,000 tons.
That's all staying.
We don't really haul, I mean, there might be a delivery right across the river, but over the last few years, knowing this resource is going down, we try to stay, you know, basically the rivers are cut off. We don't want to go over the bridge at all. You know, we invested a bunch over on the east side in Turner and at our Hillway location with new plants to handle the majority of the Salem market up and down I-5. And the idea is to keep this resource really just for Polk County on this west side. So that's been our operating model for the last few years. This is just an opportunity, you know, like these guys have said today. It's a spot in the middle of the site that for some reason wasn't included. It makes a lot of sense to us, obviously, and a lot of financial savings, not have to try to bring rock from somewhere, even from the Hayden Lake position. That's a long haul, same thing. It's not through town, but it's quite the process to get it here. When this is available and timing wise, I think it's a big benefit for the residents and any projects. And like I said, the majority of this material is call it maintenance, whether it's paved roads or, you know, redoing concrete structures. So there's a lot of public pieces to this that, I mean, that drives up costs a lot when you have to truck it. I mean, our trucks are $150 an hour cost just to move material. And when you start moving anything over, you know, 3 or 4 miles, it gets very expensive. And the logistics, it's difficult too, because if we want to run a truck and trailer to maximum capacity, a lot of times you can't deliver with those. So you talk about you're double your trucking, you're bringing your truck in, you're dumping the rock, then you're reloading it and then delivering local. So that's a big component that's just not beneficial to anybody. So.
I was involved when they first expanded in the West Salem rock pit, and our biggest concerns was trucking and traffic. And the infrastructure is there to handle it now. It's doing fine. And the impact wasn't near as bad as what we were concerned with, nor the noise. Although the residents that live down in that area, they hear it, but after a while, I've had some friends live down there. You almost get to where you don't notice it because it's just there every day. It's like anything else around your work, we work with. The horns are a little annoying once in a while, but the infrastructure for this, it makes perfect sense in my mind to agree with this. Why would you walk away from all the rock you just went around? And it's already there. It's never gonna be used for anything. So let's get the value out of it to our residents. Cause it's already there. We're not opening a brand new site and interrupting other areas and other people at this time. We're gonna have to in the future, but let's do what we can while we're there and be efficient with our moves.
Just one more question, sorry. This is our first interaction really on the record. Have you done any consultation with DSL or DEQ or there obviously you're a state waterway. And we're digging pretty deep there. So just curious if you foresee similar barriers to the Hayden Lake site. I mean, they'd be different, but state sort of concerns.
I
Just
don't,
wait till the application.
yeah, I don't, it's being it's an existing mine and we've mined north of it, south of it. It's just a piece in the middle. I don't see any big concerns. Obviously rules change, people change. So we will be prepared for that. I mean, we're going to be out in front of this. We're going to be meeting with the community. We'll have open houses. We're doing this similar process down in Lane County too. We've got a good team together. So we'll be out in front of it with the community. We realize it's our burden to get this done. And that's what we've, hired these guys and we do have our own outreach plan and system, but we just look at this as our first step. We need to, and we're going to do it together. And I think it's a big win for everybody because the alternative, whether it's imported or, if we can get the Hayden Lake thing done, it's less impact, and I would say we need to do the study, but I wouldn't say that Polk County has a lot of aggregates in their reserves. We've sold a lot of material out of this site and done a lot of work. And ags are hard to come by in all of our markets, and we're going further and further out. And there's just a huge impact to everybody with that. So, it is permitting. It is difficult, but this is one of the, I guess, what I would say, easier pieces, I think. Obviously, we got to, convince the community it's the right thing to do, and we have to work with everybody to get it done. But we look at this as a really good project for everybody.
What do you want to do?
Mayor, motion?
I'd like to pause a bit here. I feel this is kind of an initial conversation, and I do understand and appreciate the need for material for economic development and growth in Polk County. But I kind of see this as an initial conversation, and we've allowed the applicant to address the board. So I'd like to pause a bit on our decision if possible. There might be other questions too that will come up based on this conversation and give the public a bit of time to catch up to where we're at in this process. Again, I think initiating the process is a more significant move than 0 to 1. I appreciate that, but I want to make sure we have I want to make sure I have a full understanding of the public benefit, pros and cons, to make that kind of analysis for myself. And I imagine members of the public might want to as well. So that's kind of where I'm at. But
So would you like to put this on a pause for
I
14
move to initiate the process.
in,
Initiate the legislative amendment.
okay,
That's how you open the gates for all the public input part.
and I second that. Yeah. So all those in favor, please say aye.
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 I'd rather wait 30 days,
Okay,
but it motion carries.
motion carries. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
You have a need for executive session?
Yes, sir. Board will meet in executive session pursuant to ORS 192-660 sub 2 D, to consult with individuals appointed by the county to represent the county's interest in labor negotiations.